Hey everyone, welcome to Setting Up Your Brokerage Account, where we take the first key step into making your investing dream a reality. So let's make myself a little bit smaller. All right, so sign up, set up, and fund your brokerage account. So when we set up our brokerage account, we'll get a demo balance of $100,000 USD. This is just pretty much play money for us to practice with. What's important here is that when you make your brokerage account, you will make your first real deposit into your brokerage account. So this is a promise to yourself that you will not give up on learning investing. So I'll walk you through the steps on how to set things up and pass KYC, which is short for Know Your Customer. And then we'll make a screenshot of your live dashboard and save it into your milestone folder so we can post it into the community at the end of the module to share your progress. After this, you'll have achieved the hardest part about investing, which is starting. So why is this so important to do now? As mentioned in the very first lesson, the biggest enemy to you is delaying. So just setting your account up and depositing is already 90% of the battle stopping people from building true wealth. But you can start with just 100 euros or 500 euros or, in USD or pounds or whatever currency that you're working in, at least to make this a commitment to yourself that you're going to become an investor. It's that first step that's the hardest. So why is this so important to do now? We actually tested this where we had different versions of the course. So the course has been up for a while, and we tried at different stages, in module 1 or in module 4 at the end or module 5 to ask people to make the deposit. And we saw that over 95% of students who deposit in module 1, so already at the beginning, become successful investors, whereas only 6% of students who take the course and plan to start later, or we ask them to deposit at the end, actually become successful investors. And the reason is because if you don't make the commitment to yourself, we all know how it is when you take a free course, whether it's paid or even free, that if you make the key, most hardest step at the very end, you've already lost a little bit of motivation. It takes a lot of work. So taking this step at the very beginning makes things a lot easier. So taking that first deposit early on is super important. It's a commitment to yourself that you will become a successful investor even if life gets in the way. We know things can get crazy. Sometimes we want to get around to this, but we never do. But the important thing is that you will still have invested in something and will already be compounding in the market. And you're far more likely to finish and learn properly from this course. So remember, the earlier you start, the more time can compound and grow your money. And the moment you take the commitment as early as possible, the easier everything else becomes, and you already start growing your money as early as possible. All right, now let's get into it. So we're going to go in now. I'm going to screen share the steps in the very beginning. It's best for you to follow along as I do things as well, because it's just a lot easier for you to just mimic the steps that I do and just do things step by step as I go along the video. All right. Okay, so now here we're in the landing page of eToro. Let me just make myself a little bit smaller. Okay, so we're on the landing page. Invest with a trusted broker, eToro. I mean, it's pretty simple. You'll be having something similar to every broker that you find, but eToro is the one that we would recommend for this. It's pretty simple and user-friendly and has a lot of great features. So we can click here, start investing. And this is going to start bringing us through the account funnel. So you can either do it with a generic email, username, password, and you accept the terms and conditions, etc. Or you can do it directly via Google or Facebook account. I personally am going to do Google since it's going to be easier for me. And now you'll be choosing a username. So you can pick whatever. Okay, I'll just name myself Investing Teacher. Acknowledge, and then create an account. Let's just see that we pass this test with the cars. Boom, verify. Let this load. And then here they've added us $10 of a free asset. Let's just pick some generic one. Okay, I mean, you can choose to accept this free $10, but just for simplicity, I'm just going to decline it here. Actually, why not? Let's just do Banco Santander. Continue. And now we're on the path to investing. So what we're going to do is going to ask us a series of questions. Okay, so we're back into the presentation. So we're going to walk you through the steps now. Obviously, I can't walk you through every single step with my own personal information. This is your own personal information. So first, they're going to ask you things like what's your legal name, your gender, your date of birth. And then it's going to go through, what is your current address? Make sure that this is your resident address because they'll ask you later on for a utility bill or some sort of something to confirm it. They ask you where you're born, your citizenship, etc. So they're going to ask you basic personal information. And then they're going to put you through a quiz. So they're going to ask you here stock investing experience. Over the last year, how many times have you invested in stocks and or ETFs? So here, most of you are just going to click never. Obviously, answer this truthfully. So some of you, it might be 1 to 10 or 10 to 20 or 20 plus. Answer this as truthfully as possible. The point of this quiz is just for eToro to understand your level of pre-existing investing knowledge and experience to help limit the things that you have access to. And that's not a bad thing. Even if you get things wrong, so even if you go through this quiz and you get a lot of things wrong, that's totally fine, because the more eToro limits things for you, the less chances we have to mess up. So we don't want access to fancy things. We want to keep things simple. So even if we get all of this wrong, don't worry. But for some of you who want to answer this correctly, I'm just showing you how. So leverage investing experience. The following questions relate to your leverage investment experience: CFDs, futures, options, forex, margin trading over the last year. How many of these types of investments have you made? Most of you will just click never, and that's totally fine. Obviously, answer truthfully. Trading knowledge. What's your investment education experience regarding leverage products, CFDs, futures, options, forex, margin trade, and ETF? So some of you might take I have no financial knowledge, or some of you might even already have an academic degree in a financial related field or professional work experience. For most of you, since you plan to go through this course, you can pretty much select I have attended trading courses, since you have learned the theory of what you need to know for investing. So it's totally fine to just click I have attended trading courses, as by the end of this course you'll have all the knowledge you need to understand what's going on, including explanation of what CFDs are, what margin means, ETFs, etc. So you'll know all this by the end of the course. Okay, so trading knowledge assessment. So here they're basically going to ask you questions to pretty much understand what your level of trading knowledge is. Of course, for most of you, you're not going to know what any of these answers mean, but we'll just go through the different statements. So it's basically a true or false statement questionnaire. So please mark the correct statements. I invest 1,000 with 20 to 1 leverage ratio to open my position of 20,000. If the market moves 5% against my position, I will lose $1,000. So this is true. And just by the way, I'm just going to go through things quickly. You don't need to know all this right now. You'll learn this as you go through the course, so all of these things will make sense later. So what leverage is, what a CFD is. All you need to know for now is that these are the two correct answers. So I am required to maintain sufficient margin to cover the margin requirement of my open leverage positions. If I don't, then positions may be closed by eToro. It's basically what a margin is. It's something that you need to maintain. But it all seems like mumbo jumbo now, but it'll be explained later, specifically in module 3, where we go over what a CFD is and how it mechanically works. So that'll be very important for you to understand basically the statements here. And then I know for some of you who are quite familiar with trading knowledge, this last statement is actually not correct. So if the market falls rapidly, my CFD will close at the exact stop loss level. So for many of you, you might think this is correct because that's sort of the point of a stop loss, where it automatically stops or closes your position or your trade at the exact level that you specify it to. It will attempt to do that, but it doesn't actually stop at the exact stop loss level. So if the market is falling rapidly, if it's super volatile, once it hits that level, the stop loss will be triggered and your position will be attempted to be closed, but it's not a guarantee that it will close at exactly that level. It will try its best to be as close to that level as possible. So it might stop below the point that you tried to have the stop loss level set at. So I know some of you may say that this statement is correct. It actually isn't, because it tries to stop it at that exact level, but in reality, it will just do the best it can versus what the market can allow. So anyways, all of these statements, don't need to worry too much about it. These are the two ones that are correct. The rest are incorrect, and you'll understand why in module 3. We'll explain basically the theory behind CFDs and how it works. So that's basically what this questionnaire is about. Try to get this correct if you can. If not, no worries. We'll explain this later. So, trading strategy. How long do you plan to leave your positions open? So, this for us is going to be more than several months/years. Few seconds up to 24 hours. This is what highly active traders are doing. And few weeks up to several months. This is what short-term investors are looking for. But that's not us. We're looking to buy and hold long-term into the future, because that's what we know is relatively reliable. This is where we can rely on the 9%, because we know in the short term things go up, things go down. It can be pretty volatile. It can be very stressful. But we don't want to do that. We want to be long long-term buy and hold investors for more than several months, years, sometimes even decades, depending on your investing horizon. But for many of you, it's definitely going to be at least a few years because, as mentioned, we don't want to think about it. We just want to have it be automatic. We just buy into the index fund or ETF that we want, and we just keep on buying and just have it grow over time, and we don't want to think about it, right? We don't want the stress of actively trading of every few hours or days having to commit another trade. That's not what we want. We want the simple, efficient method that's been supported by Warren Buffett and economics Nobel Prize winners. We want to keep it more than several months or years. Purpose of trading. So in reality, all of these answers are fine except the short-term returns. The short-term returns is not what we're chasing for. We're looking for long-term stable returns. So for some of you, it's going to be future planning, saving for kids, education, retirement. Some of you might be saving for your first home, or some of you might just be wanting additional passive income or additional revenues. So these three are fine. Short-term returns is not where we're going for here. Your attitude to risk. So how much do you plan to deposit into your eToro account over the course of the year? So you'll click this and choose what the actual appropriate number is for you. So this can be up to 20,000. This could be 20 to 50,000. Could be 100,000. It all depends on what you plan to invest yourself over the course of the year. Which risk reward scenario best describes your annual investment expectations with eToro? So here there are actually two viable answers. It could be the 20% or the 10%. So, I mean, over the long term, remember we're basing our head around 9%. So that's what we're going for here. The closest thing would be 10% gain and potential 6% loss. On an individual year basis, though, on a short-term view mindset, the more realistic view here is 20% up, negative 12% down. That's what the reality is from a short-term year-to-year basis. But, we're going to look here on the long-term approach. It's going to be around 10%, 6%. So that's why I have here selected positive 10% minus 6%. But you'll see as you start doing real investing on a year-to-year basis, it's going to be more like 15, 20% on the good years, and then on the bad years, it's going to take a dip. But that's why it all over the long run goes on to this 9%, as we mentioned, over the long term. So picking either of these two answers is fine, but I'm just going to take the simplistic long-term approach and just do the 10%, as we want to stay relatively risk-reverse. Now, does any of the following apply to you? Brackets, this doesn't apply to most people, so that's the case. If any of your immediate family members are a director or a 10% shareholder of a publicly traded corporation, congrats to you, but this is not the case for most of you. So obviously answer this as truthfully as possible. If you are employed by a brokerage firm or securities exchange, or a family member of yours is, make sure to tick that. Or if it's a high-level elected or appointed public official. But for most of you, none of these are actually going to apply to you. So you can just tick that and move forward. And then they might have additional or new quiz questions, but don't worry, even if you get them wrong. They might ask you additional question relating to crypto or an ETF question, but just don't worry about it. I've brought you through the majority of the questions, so even if you have an additional quiz question, don't panic. Just select whatever you think is right, even if you don't really know the answer to. It's fine even if you get it wrong. Okay, so now if you do get something wrong, or something in your answers, such as your income level or maybe attitude to risk, pops a red flag to the system, you might get this message and have CFDs restricted to your account. So this is, for example, a photo given by a student who got the answers wrong, or where the trading knowledge was actually correct, but her income level was maybe a bit too low, or her attitude to risk was very conservative. And there are basically multiple different factors that can go into this. Or if you say that you have no financial knowledge at all and you didn't take any courses or whatever, any of those answers could potentially pop you as a red flag, where it will say CFDs are not appropriate for you. Based on the information you have provided, you are unlikely to fully understand the risks associated with complex products, and as such, the CFD products offered on our platform are not appropriate for you. We recommend that you seriously consider whether you wish to proceed with trading with such products. CFDs are complex instruments and come with a high risk, blah, 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 blah. If you continue, you're confirming that you are aware. So if you see this message, don't worry, say that you do understand the risks and that you confirm. Basically, from a regulation standpoint, they have to give this warning because CFDs, also known as contract for differences, use something called leverage, which is using money that is not your own. We can also switch off this option. So later on, I'll show you how to change your settings to make sure that you don't use any money that's not your own, so you don't use leverage. So that's basically how you'll do it. But if you do get this message, it's not the biggest problem in the world. It's fine. You'll still be able to use most of the products that you're interested in. If you're not based in the US, then some of the US ETFs or index funds might be off limits to you because, for example, as a European investor, due to regulations, you cannot directly purchase a US ETF. Therefore, you have to use a CFD in order to buy a US ETF. Pretty much a CFD is basically used as sort of like a middleman product to be able to invest into the US ETFs. So if you get this message, you might be locked out of US ETFs. But that isn't too big of a problem because that's totally fine. Most ETFs that we would be interested in have their own European version. Basically, it's an ETF or index fund that has the name UCITS in it. The UCITS is basically a sort of a regulatory stamp of approval for funds that are based in the EU. So you'll still have access to all those ETFs. So even though you cannot invest in the S&P 500 directly in the US, you can do it through the same S&P 500 fund, but a UCITS fund that's based in Europe so that you have access to that. Often you can invest into those ETFs without a CFD. You can just invest in it directly. And therefore, even though CFDs might be restricted for you, you'll still have access to UCITS ETFs, so European ETFs. So that's totally fine. And for many of you who are not based in the US or based outside of the US, you would want to invest in European ETFs anyways, because depending on your country, the US might have an automatic 30% withholding tax for any profits that you gain from US based ETFs. So for many of you, there's even a preference to want to be investing in European ETFs versus US-based ETFs. So, I mean, if you do get this message and CFDs are restricted for your account, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's, of course, a little bit better to have more options. But even with the restrictions that you would get, you still have access to the things that you would pretty much want to be investing in anyways. Later throughout the process, if you want to open your account again for CFDs, you can contact the customer support and ask for your CFD eligibility to be reevaluated. And you can go through the questionnaire again and update things, maybe update your income to a higher level or whatever is truthful, or go through the trading knowledge assessment again, get the questions right, or your attitude to risk right, and then things will be available to you again, so you'll have access to CFDs. But even if you do get this message, it's totally fine. You can just click confirm and you'll be able to go through the course, do your investing. Just your account will be restricted to certain products, so you won't be able to invest in CFD products, which will mainly be US ETFs, but all the other investing products that you would want to invest in, you will still be able to. So don't worry too much about this. After this point, we're going to go to what's known as KYC. So it's short for Know Your Customer. So it's pretty much asking you personal information to verify that you exist as a real person. They need to verify where your income comes from to make sure it doesn't come from any illegal activities. So these questions might seem scary, they might seem invasive, it's a lot of questions, but try your best. Remember, if you can successfully get through all the personal information and verification questions, this is the hardest part of your entire investing journey done already. Some of you might get instantly verified, and some of you there might be a few days before they accept you, but don't worry, you can still progress through the course even if they take some time to verify you. But the important thing is that you answer all the questions so you can go ahead and deposit your first amount. This is the most important thing. This is the whole point of this video, is to make sure you take that first commitment step. So they'll be asking here about your financial status. You need to choose your source of income. So obviously click this and choose whatever is right for you. If you're on a salary, or if you're retired, if you're relying on investments, there are going to be multiple different options of your source of income. Pick whatever's the most relevant for you. Choose your occupation, whatever industry that you're working in or not working in, and then, give some details regarding employer name, address, position, whatever your net annual income is, some basic information, and then your total cash and liquid assets. So basically, what are the assets that you hold that are liquid? So a house doesn't count, that's not liquid. So these are things usually like how much is in your bank account, how much is already in your investments, what are things that you can easily sell by tomorrow. That's basically your liquid assets. So cash and liquid assets, the things that you could invest. So just pick whatever is correct for you. Then it's going to go to proof of identity. So there, either your passport or your ID card will be best. If it's easiest for you, just to pick whatever. If you have the choice, use your passport because it's just a faster verification. But both things work. You just need to upload a screenshot or a picture or a scan of either. Then you're going to go to address verification. So uploading a clear copy or a scan of a utility bill or a bank statement. You can look in here to see the full list of what things they accept. But it's basically something to prove that with your full name, your current home address that you gave, and that it was relatively recent, less than 3 months old, just to verify that you do live where you said you lived, because this is very important for eToro to understand where is your tax and financial residence based, because it helps them to basically do things correctly for legal purposes. All right, then depending on the country that you're in, they might ask you for your tax identification number. So many of you will have this. It will look very different depending on what country that you're in. So in this case, this account I created in Spain. So it's asking for my DNI or NIE number. This is going to be very different whether you're in the UK or whether you're in Romania or whether you're in the US. So it's pretty much just putting in your relevant tax ID number, or if you have a different tax residency country. Just submit whatever you have. Then, if you're outside of the US, they might ask you to sign a W-8BEN form. So this is basically just a form to declare that, you're not a resident in the US, but you're a resident somewhere else, and that you're basically submitting that if you invest in any US stocks or ETFs or equities, that you don't have to pay the withholding tax. Okay, so this will basically bring you to this form here, where they'll confirm that your different address and identification information, and that you'll claim the tax treaty benefits between whatever country that you're resident in and the United States, just to make sure that you don't pay the 30% withholding tax for any investments that you make in the US. That's basically, remember, just don't worry about it too much. The 30% withholding tax is just the profits that you make from investments in stocks or ETFs in the US, that, they would usually withhold 30% of the profits that you make. But this can be adjusted depending on the tax treaty of your relevant country. So don't worry about it too much. Don't overcomplicate things. This is just to basically make things easier for you. Just certify that you are a resident of whatever country that you put in, of where you actually live, and agree to the certification so that they take care of everything for you. And, we'll be showing you roughly for your country what it is that you need to do, where you need to look at in order to take care of this. So that's basically the last step. So after passing verification, you can then make your first deposit as a commitment and then take that screenshot of your dashboard as your first milestone. So in the next video, we'll just explain again how to do this milestone, but you'll basically be on this page. You might be in the demo environment where you'll see a virtual dashboard of $100,000. If you are on that dashboard, make sure to click the button on the bottom left where it says switch to real, and then you'll be brought to your real portfolio. So it's obviously going to be empty in the beginning. So what you need to do is then click deposit funds. Once you click on that, you can then deposit the amount that you want. As mentioned, doing something between 100 to 500 euros, dollars, or pounds, or whatever your local currency is a good start, and it's a perfect commitment to yourself. And then once you have that done, you'll find your deposited amount here in the cash available. It's only going to be in cash available. It's not going to be invested until you make your first investment. Obviously, some of you might already want to make your first investment with the amount that you have deposited. So if you do that, then your first investment might appear here in your portfolio, but this part is optional. What's important here is that you need to have the first deposited amount made. Then in the next video, we'll show you briefly how to screenshot it. You'll basically screenshot what this image is. And then I'll be showing you how to save it into your folder so we can post it into the community at the end of the video of concluding Module 1. That's it for this lesson. Make sure you go through and you actually complete the whole verification process. You set up your brokerage account and you make your first deposit, as this is the hardest step. Trust me, this is where 90% of the effort is. Everything after that is just educating yourself, learning how to make things smooth, and just absorbing the information is going to be super easy. Trust me, the hardest thing of this entire course is just setting up your brokerage account and making that first deposit. Everything after that is easy. As mentioned, over 95% of people who go through this first step become successful investors. All right, now that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll just show you again how to save it, how to save your screenshot into a folder for the concluding Module 1 lesson, where we'll show you how to post this milestone 1 and the next milestone 2 into the community.